Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to be at the Yeronga Community Centre with my parliamentary colleagues, the Minister for Communities, Leanne Enoch, and also the State Member for Miller, Mark Bailey. We're also joined today by Jenny Thomas from the Australian Services Union, Amy McVie from the Queensland Council of Social Services, QCOS, and also Melinda, who runs this community centre and has done some amazing work on the south side of Brisbane for more than a decade now, supporting this community, and did a very important role and an ongoing role to support this part of Brisbane as it recovered from flooding, particularly in the electorate of Mark Bailey, the State Member for Miller. Every day across Queensland we see the work, the vital work of community centres, reaching out to help Queenslanders, often Queenslanders who are vulnerable and in need, helping Queenslanders during their toughest times. And we saw that during the pandemic. We saw it during the floods earlier this year, and we see it in a whole range of community activities. The work of community centres often is invisible to Queenslanders, but it is absolutely indispensable each and every day. We were proud as a government to almost double the operational funding for community centres across Queensland in the budget in June. But we know that community centres like the Yeronga Community Centre, like YFS in Logan, St Vinny's, all sorts of community organisations are facing increased cost pressures. Cost of food when they prepare great meals for the community, and we saw a community breakfast here this morning. The cost of distributing those meals through increased fuel costs, particularly for organisations like Meals on Wheels. So today the government is announcing that it will be increasing the indexation for the contracts that we provide and have with the non-government sector, the community sector in Queensland. What does that mean? Indexation will increase from 2.88% this year to 5.07%. In real terms, that's a $50 million injection into the community and non-government sector in Queensland to help them with those increased costs this year. And that will also help them pay staff in an appropriate circumstances with the increase in the award decision, which was to increase wages this year by 4.6%. So that's what our government does. Good jobs, better services, protecting Queensland's great lifestyle. We want to support the great jobs and the work that these community organisations do. We want to support the great services and the better services that they provide to Queenslanders. So we're pleased to do that today. I've also asked the Treasury previously to look at the indexation process. We are in a new world of higher inflation. It appears that that may moderate next financial year, but we're already working with peak organisations like QCOS, the Australian Services Union and others to look at what that indexation model should be going forward. But we are very pleased and delighted to support the great work of Melinda and so many other people like her who help Queenslanders across the length and breadth of the state. Speaking of getting on with the job, I'll be getting on with the job to promote Queensland next week as I travel to meet with some of our big trading partners in South Korea, in Japan and in Singapore. Our recovery has led the world in many ways, but other parts of the world, their economies are reopening and reawakening now. So I think it's so important as Trade Minister to continue our investment journeys, our investment missions and our investment commitment to those partner nations who are so important to Queensland. So I'll be leading that trade mission and investment mission next week, taking some of our key leaders in Treasury and our investment entities to South Korea, to Japan and to Singapore, to look at opportunities for investment in our state, investment in those jurisdictions, and of course the greatest opportunity of all, which is to strengthen our economy and to create more jobs. I also wanted to say a little bit about the proposal of the LNP to rename part of the rail system in Queensland. The death of the Sovereign should not be used as an opportunity by a political organisation like the LNP to gather data for a political database. Questions need to be asked of the LNP leadership today why they are hosting a petition on a party political website and are not using the well-established tradition of a parliamentary petition. I think it's highly disrespectful before the funeral of the Sovereign that the LNP should be seeking to gather the data of Queensland citizens for what could only be described as party political purposes. A funeral will be held for the late Sovereign next Monday, and during this time I think it's most inappropriate and disrespectful for the LNP to be engaging in this activity. Minister Bailey can talk more about the naming protocols for rail lines in Queensland, but I think it's inappropriate, it's wrong, and it shouldn't be happening. And I'm calling, this is my decision, I think the LNP should be putting this aside. They should be putting this issue aside until the appropriate period has passed. We're having a national day of remembrance on the 22nd of September, and that will be an opportunity for Australians to reflect with a national memorial to be held in Canberra, to be attended by our Premier and, of course, our Governor. So it's highly inappropriate and disrespectful at this time. Happy to take questions on that or any other issues about the announcement today. But before I do that, I might hand over to Minister Enoch as the Minister of Communities to say a few things, Minister Bailey as the local MP, then Jenny, Amy and then Melinda to say a few words, particularly about what it means for community centres to provide you with this additional funding.
Well, thank you so much, Treasurer, and this is an amazing announcement today, and I want to acknowledge, of course, the Services Union and QCOS, who've been, on behalf of their members, working very closely with Treasury to get to this point, to be able to support community organisations right across Queensland. Community organisations who deliver vital services to so many people right across our state. And at this time, when those services are most needed, it's community centres like this one here at Yeronga that are incredibly important. For many Queenslanders, right now, they're beginning to turn to government for support for the first time for some people. And community centres, neighbourhood and community centres, are the, soft entry into some of those services. It's a safe place to be able to come, talk to people, have your issues seen to, and of course get the right information to be able to support what's happening in your life. But this announcement is absolutely very much welcomed, and of course it's on top of our $115.8 million announcement to the neighbourhood and community sector neighbourhood and community centre sector at the last budget. That included a $51.8 million uplift to base funding to now $230,000 as base funding. That is the biggest uplift to base funding ever in this state. And of course we are spending more with regards to ensuring that we're expanding and building more neighbourhood centres across the state. $39 million to be able to build new neighbourhood and community centres and to, of course, to redevelop where necessary. And we've also expanded our Community Connect workers through a $9.3 million investment so that we now have 20 of those Community Connect workers across the state. These neighbourhood and community centres are so important right across Queensland. Here in Yeronga, I'm told by Melinda that they have delivered over 40,000 meals out of their kitchen since the COVID pandemic began. That's a huge effort. So not only is the uplift a great addition to be able to support neighbourhood and community centres, but this particular announcement by the Treasurer is very, very much welcome, and I know that community centres right across the state will be welcoming this, but not just community centres, also community organisations who deliver vital services to so many. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Minister. Look, fantastic to have the Treasurer, Cameron Dick, and Leanne Enoch, Minister for Communities and Housing, here at Yeronga Community Centre. This community centre is the nerve centre in response to the floods here around not just the immediate area, but we have people coming from far and wide for support and the skill and the care and regard that Melinda and her team here ran, and all the support services we put into this centre. So, I want to thank them, and I think this decision today is an investment in those kinds of people who, when the chips are down, they're always there. And, not just during the floods. This community centre, as Minister Enoch just said, 40,000 meals. They support vulnerable people every single day. Right beside us is the community pantry. Inside of there are often different kinds of things that when you're really in a jam, you can't even afford to go to the grocery store. People know they can come here and they'll be helped. So this investment is not just for Melinda at the Community Centre, but for people like them all over the state, who everybody knows they can rely on when things are tough. They put their heart and their soul into these jobs. They certainly don't do them for remuneration. They do them because they care for people. And I want to thank the team here, but also all the community centres right across our state who help vulnerable people every day. Linda, would you like to...
Good morning. My name's Jennifer Thomas, the Executive President of the Services Union, representing the workforce who work in community services and disability across this state as well as across the country. And our members have been campaigning this year for a wage increase. Many workers in this sector are women, and they're feeling the pinch and those pressures of cost of living. So they were in desperate need for a wage increase, and they received that when the annual wage decision was handed down on the 1st of July at 4.6%, and it was very welcomed. And today we welcome this great decision from the Treasurer in terms of funding that outcome. What it shows for the workforce who work so hard every day to provide these vital services to our communities is that their work is valued, their work is respected, and also it is a great measure for sustainability to the sector, a sector that is in great need in terms of a supply to make sure that we can recruit and we can retain our staff for the coming years as one of the fastest growing sectors in our economy. And largely, again, they are women workers, and we want to ensure that we can sustain their employment and their careers, and so they continue to do their great jobs they do every day for their communities. Thank you.
Thanks. Amy?
Good morning. I'm Amy McVie, the CEO of the Queensland Council of Social Service. I can hear a collective sigh of relief as community organisations respond to this $50 million funding injection that the Queensland Government has announced this morning. There are around 150,000 workers in the community services sector and 10,000 charities in Queensland. These organisations are with Queenslanders as they face floods, pandemics, the housing crisis, and supporting women and children making the brave decision to escape domestic and family violence. An additional $50 million, which has been announced today, will support our community organisations to continue to deliver those essential services to Queenslanders when they need it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Melinda, did you want to say anything? Thank you.
Good morning. Welcome to Yeronga Community Centre. I'm Melinda McInturf. I'm the Community Resilience Coordinator. I'm also the coordinator of Yeronga Community Centre. I just want to thank the ministers for being here today to making this announcement. For us, it's life-changing. Every day we make a difference in people's lives at our centre and other centres like ours across Queensland. This new funding enables us to provide more programs, more support, and also build our community resilience. We know that our community in this year, as it has done in previous years, has suffered the disaster of the flooding. This funding allows us to provide more support to our community, to provide resilience programs, to help build their resilience for the future and help us help them for the future in our community. We just want to thank the ministers for their commitment to the community sector this year. It is life-changing. I have worked for the sector for over 10 years, and the announcement that was made with the budget, it was just so exciting to see that happen, and I know that happens from a lot of work from a lot of organisations like Neighbourhood Centres Queensland, QCOS and the Services Union. And as a worker, I just want to thank them all for all the dedication that they've shown to us over the last 10 years to make this program happen. So to them, I thank them as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Melinda. And I think I join with Minister Bailey and Minister Enoch, who are all strong advocates for this investment, and everyone else here today to thank you for your work. You really represent a wonderful frontline workers working in community centres across Queensland, and we're really proud to be able to support you. Okay, happy to take questions on that or anything else, or for any other ministers? Yeah, Majura.
I was going to go on to other topics.
Anyone on this? Okay, good.
Just on your trip, on your trade mission
Yes.
to Singapore, South Korea and Japan. Can you give us more detail on that? How long is it going to be? Who's coming with you?
So
What kind of
I'll,
people that you're planning?
yeah, I'll be travelling to South Korea, Japan and Singapore to meet with a range of companies who are looking to invest in Queensland.
In that
So,
region?
yes, at this stage. And so that will include companies interested in investing in the resources sector in Queensland, including renewable hydrogen. So that's an important investment pathway, a traditional investment in Queensland through our traditional resources industries, and new opportunities, and also looking to work with some of the big investment entities in those countries as they have significant investments in Queensland to support those investments in our state, which create jobs and opportunities for Queenslanders. So we do this every year after the budget. We travel to our major trading partners and our investment partners to reaffirm that strong relationship that exists between Queensland and countries around the world. But we look for new opportunities all the time, and we know that renewable hydrogen is a real opportunity for our state as we move to decarbonise our energy system and decarbonise our economy. And these investment missions are very important from that perspective.
Minister,
Yes, Tim.
No more questions on that one, but just a question about La Nina and floods. Do you think Queensland is prepared for La Nina, and given that we had flooding so recently as well?
Well, it's a very important question, and we know the decision or the announcement of the Bureau of Meteorology effectively declaring a La Nina season is upon us. But if you want to live anywhere in the world, you'd want to live in the most battle-hardened, ready state in the world, and that is Queensland. Regrettably, we have lived through a number of these natural disasters, but Queenslanders always get ready for whatever the world throws at them. And we know that organisations like the Yeronga Community Centre will get prepared, and they will help their local residents and local community members get ready as well. At a state level, of course, the Cabinet has been briefed on not only the weather conditions but the preparations that are being taken to ensure our state is ready to respond. And I know various state agencies, the Queensland Police Service, the Fire and Emergency Service, the SES, working with local government, are taking steps to be prepared. So I think now is an opportunity on a brilliant, beautiful, sunny Queensland day for Queenslanders to get ready, to start thinking about what they need to do. There are various resources available to Queenslanders, including online resources, to ensure that they are ready and prepared the best we can. We'll continue, obviously, to prepare ourselves as a state. We'll continue to do our work as a government. We'll stand up whatever operational requirements are needed to ensure that our agencies are ready, and we'll continue to engage directly with Queenslanders so they are prepared for the coming storm and summer season that's upon us.
Do you expect that your trip to Japan, South Korea and Singapore, a great country, will also work to repair relationships, I guess, that have been frayed, as indicated by the Japanese ambassador?
No, our relationships with those countries are very strong, including with Japan. And the response that I've received has been very positive about my mission to Japan. Those investments continue, and all of the discussions I've had with a range of Japanese companies indicates to me that they remain firmly committed to the strong, ongoing, decade-long relationship that exists between Queensland and Japan. Japan knows we're a great state to invest in, to commit to, and that will continue well into the future. We do this every year, and we'll continue to do it into the future.
Minister, we've seen the announcement about Star not getting its casino licence in Sydney. Does that concern you about Star's future endeavours here in Queensland?
Well, obviously the announcement yesterday from the inquiry and the conclusions that have been made are very troubling. They're deeply troubling indeed, and they are very concerning. And the Attorney-General, as the responsible minister, has issued a statement and made those comments. So we will ensure that the outcomes of that inquiry are passed on to the inquiry being conducted by Robert Goddison, QC, former judge of the Supreme Court, former judge of the Court of Appeal, as he continues his work. As the Attorney-General said, the work of that inquiry can take into account those sorts of matters, but they are very troubling and very concerning findings, and our inquiry here will take those into account, as will relevant other regulatory agencies, including the Office of Liquor and Gaming Regulation.
Do you think our inquiry should have been broader?
No, the advice from the Attorney-General is that our inquiry and relevant state agencies can take these matters into account in determining how gaming licences can be managed, regulated or otherwise subject to regulatory control.
But isn't it concerning that we have to rely on another inquiry to actually inform us?
No, we're conducting our own inquiry, and I've got full faith and confidence in that inquiry and the investigations it's undertaken, including public hearings, submissions that have been received, and the conclusions that it will eventually make.
No inquiry though, it doesn't look at casino licences. Our inquiry at all, it doesn't look at that aspect. I mean, it should have, shouldn't it?
Well, there are various regulatory bodies that manage the gaming licences that are issued in Queensland. They will consider those matters, as will this inquiry. And so I've got confidence in the work that's being done and the report that will ultimately be received by the government.
I think I might be wrong, but from what I understand, the opposition is going to push for an inquiry to look at the dealings with ministers and lobbyists, right before the Queensland, before that casino project deal was signed. Would you support something like that?
Let Mr Goddison do his work. That's what I say to the opposition. Let this inquiry do its work. Let's see what Mr Goddison comes forward. He's a very distinguished Queensland lawyer. He's a very distinguished former Queensland jurist. He should have the opportunity, free from political influence from the LNP. We know the LNP is trying to politicise the passing of the Sovereign to take political advantage of that. We should let Mr Goddison do his work, and he should be free from political interference from the LNP.
But the inquiry, the Goddison inquiry, you say let him do his work. It doesn't look at lobbying. It doesn't look at the relationship between government. Does the government have something to fear about an inquiry that would look at the relationship of lobbyists?
The government took action to respond to claims that were made about this company. And that's why it set up the inquiry, and we should allow Mr Goddison to do his work and provide a report to government. Let's see what he has to say. Let's see what he recommends. Let's see what he comes up with, and let's see what those other regulatory bodies who are responsible for supervising and monitoring gaming in Queensland, let's see what those regulatory bodies have to say as well. Their work continues independently of Mr Goddison as well. So I've got faith and confidence in that. Let's see what they come up with.
On Queensland's land tax, New South Wales Finance Minister is checking if it is constitutional. Is it?
Yes.
Will you release legal advice to that?
No, the government never releases that sort of legal advice. But in any event, governments need to make decisions. I made a decision about this. I made a decision to ensure people who are avoiding paying land tax paid their fair share in this state. It's a well-promoted tax avoidance scheme to buy property in different jurisdictions, thereby avoiding the land tax threshold. That is the bottom line with this. The LNP can talk about modelling and research and legal advice. Why aren't they on the side of Queenslanders who own property in this state? If you are a Queenslander who owns property in this state and you cross the threshold, then you pay land tax. But if you adjust your affairs to buy land in different jurisdictions, thereby avoiding the land tax threshold, can I also say we have one of the second highest in the country, then why should those Queenslanders be disadvantaged? We make no apologies for making the tax system fairer in Queensland. And we think we should be on the side of Queenslanders investing in this state and not people who are avoiding the threshold by buying property in multiple jurisdictions. That is the decision that I've made. It's supported by the government. We've implemented it. The other point I'd make about the LNP is this was supported unanimously in the Parliament. When the Revenue Bill went through the Parliament in June, no one opposed this measure. Not one member of Parliament. So I'm not copying it from the LNP that somehow there's a problem with this when they supported it.
Which states have committed in writing to share land records with the Queensland government?
We work across jurisdictions and we work with revenue officers. But if other states want to be on the side of speculators who want to come up to this state, flip properties and stop Queenslanders getting into the property market, well, those states can stand up and be heard. If they want to be on the side of interstate property speculators avoiding paying land tax, well, that's a matter for those states. But to this point, our Queensland Revenue Office is working across jurisdictions with other revenue officers. We do that all the time, and we do that with the Australian Taxation Office. Those revenue officers work very cooperatively, and I've not heard anything other than cooperation that's happening towards in implementing this legislative change.
Am I thinking that it's a zero at this time? Or?
I'm not aware of anyone who is opposed, any other revenue office that is opposed to the work that we are doing. and we've communicated with all those revenue officers. But if other states want to be on the side of interstate property speculators, let them be on their side.
At what point would the government consider ripping up Star's licence here in Queensland?
Let's see what the inquiry comes up with.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Sure.
Sure.
How much will it cost State Parliament to briefly sit tomorrow to enact the day of mourning public holiday?
I'm not aware of that cost, but it'll be minimal because obviously the parliamentary staff are at Parliament, so they're working every day as part of the parliamentary system, and the MPs who will be participating will be, there's an agreement with the opposition for those MPs to come from South East Queensland, so there'll be minimal cost for the taxpayer in what is an important process to ensure we can deliver on the commitment that the Prime Minister and First Ministers across the nation have made to have a public holiday on the 22nd.
How effective will the Housing Summit be if the federal government isn't at the table?
Well, let's let the Housing Summit do its work. We're going to have our roundtable on Friday, and then we'll have a summit in October, as the Premier's announced. But getting everyone together to talk about one of the most important issues in Queensland is very important. But we work with the federal government in many ways, and as you know, the National Cabinet has housing on its agenda for its next meeting, or one of its meetings in September, I think. So we are working with the federal government, and we'll continue to work with the federal government.
Will you be attending?
Yes, I will be.
We asked the Transport Minister about that. Elizabeth Line, the naming conventions for Queensland Rail Line.
Look, the system is geared towards having directional lights. Anyone who uses the rail system knows that. So, we are not planning to name the line for some time yet. It's another 3 years until Cross River Rail project actually opens in terms of services. But look, I absolutely support the Treasurer's comments. Every person who signs LNP's petition needs to understand that their data is being harvested to their LNP political party. They are not using the parliamentary petition process. They are, in fact, using this period to gain political advantage when the funeral of the Queen is yet 4 or 5 days away. I think it's shameful.
Reading between the lines and pardon the pun, there's basically no chance of this happening. Is that right?
Look, I just think the timing of this advocacy and the way they are doing it shows that their values are not in tune with Queenslanders. To be using this as a data harvesting opportunity at this time, with the funeral of the Queen 4 days and 4 or 5 days away yet, I think is really in bad taste.
I think the New South Wales Premier and the Prime Minister are renaming a square, the Elizabeth Square in Sydney. How is that this different?
Well, look, I think the government's made it clear we're considering those sorts of things, but I think it's also relevant that we've already got a lot of things named after the Queen. We've got a hospital, we have a stadium, there's parks, there's a lot of things already named after the Queen. The government is considering that.
So this is I guess because of the naming conventions being directional, there is no chance of naming it anything other than...
Look, we haven't begun the process of considering the name of this new line, but anyone who uses the rail system knows that unlike other systems in London, they don't use directional names necessarily, whereas in Queensland, in South East Queensland, we always do. If you're a commuter, passenger, overseas, tourist, you need to have a simple system that you understand, and that's certainly a consideration when we think about when we come up with new names.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you.